Hi, it's Steve and Joe from Freshagenda. And Steve, we're back after a few weeks.
Yes. So we came back from Europe and we both got crook.
hmm
So that stopped us from doing the GDT event immediately after we got back, and then last week as well. So we apologise to the countless number of fans who've been hanging for an update from us. So here we are, and we're better, and we can talk.
So, Steve, we're back with a bit of an overview of what's happening with the weather, which is very interesting at the moment.
Yep.
And then, of course, this week's GDT, which was a bit of a non-event, really, overall.
Yeah.
And then, of course, chat of the week.
Okay.
Let's get into it.
So there's a lot of attention being given in commentary about the drought risk. Firstly, the US and the threat to the corn crop. So while this map, which is the Drought Monitor, which is put out every month, looks a lot better than it did several months ago. I mean, this is all very, there's a lot of garring in different parts, but this bit in the centre has actually got worse. We've had a lot of rain out in this the western half, which is sitting in snow and currently running to the sea. But the interesting thing is what's happening to the Corn Belt.
Yeah.
Now, I took quite a while to colour in the Corn Belt there using lines, but managed to find a very good map and represents, pretty much where the concentration is. So this is a mixed story if you look at that outcome. And we are not crop specialists, but
Hell no.
we just need to keep across this and its implications for feed costs and milk production in the US. So you can see half of that is going to get better.
Yes.
Left half of that Corn Belt is going to get better. The eastern half is not on current prediction. So that's through to September. The market has responded. So the call from the weather agency was that 57% of the corn crop is in drought and in areas that's going to get worse. The market's responded. Prices have gone up a bit. I guess the short implication at the moment is that this makes margins worse for producers that are looking out, and their feed costs going up now. That's given that the milk returns from class 3 and class 4 are fairly ordinary. This is looking a little worse. Of course, does it slow down production? The higher feed cost, does that actually kick in too?
Well, and the other thing, I guess, is that cow prices are pretty good at the moment too. So there is a bit of an incentive there to destock if you're getting a bit nervous about the conditions, isn't there? But how much will that happen? It's a bit early to call, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a fair bit of rain. You see back here, there's a fair bit of rain forecast and arriving. So that's one, that the situation will change. And yeah, the market's got us saying it's a little early.
Yeah.
Call this. Let's swing across to Europe, where the soil moisture map looks fairly horrible as well. And this is, more relevant. There's a lot of crops in the way of this, and there's also a lot of grass growth that's impacted by this. So as yet, the European Commission's weather agency is not calling for much of a markdown of the yields for crops as yet. There's been a small change in that, really. As you can see, there's quite a bit of rain forecast. That's not massive, but it covers the continent.
Yeah.
And then we'll make a little bit of difference. So again, I'll wait and see on this, but that's supply side of the sector is very focused on this as a limiter. Not much on the buy side yet.
No urgency on the buy side.
Not yet. And if you read comments from some of the traders who put out, this is not even mentioned.
Yeah.
Right. So it's but something to watch. Could get a lot worse. Let's just see. Again, cow price is very high.
Yep.
Feed markets have not yet moved. Small flutter really, and that's a response to the reality that this is going to change something. So let's keep an eye on it. So in the run up to this event, we've got markets drifting generally. Yeah. Protein drifting, the rally that was in play a couple of weeks ago, and certainly when we're over in Europe, this was already starting to run out of puff.
Yeah.
During Eucalypt, in fact. And that's continued back to fats, where we we see the effects of that last GDT result, which we didn't do a video on.
No.
But that gave us a really difficult forward curve for fat prices. AMF looks similar, with the expectation more product coming later in the year in spring without a shift in the product mix in New Zealand. So that's a prognosis there that this is going to get weaker. Europe, meanwhile, still a good carry in those forward prices for butter. Expected to reflect what we've just looked at. Perhaps production gets more difficult and it gets a bit tighter. Actually, that's quite a contrasting picture when you look at them all lined up. And for a change, we've got more expensive butterfat in New Zealand, which is interesting. But so generally weaker as we rode into this event. And the event was pretty uninteresting. Very little happened on powders. A little bit down on skim, and we'll come to that. But again, this chart on the right, so New Zealand products in fats, in cheese, in skim milk powder, more expensive than other regions again. And what's interesting when we look at whole milk powder is, while this one went sideways and we had a very small change in the net result, interesting how we've seen the main auction being giving positive results over the pulse events.
Yeah, and you can see that's been pretty consistent through that period.
Yeah. So you wonder, is there something not happening at pulse? You know, the heat of the major auction is delivering something different. You get more buyers turn up, you get more concentration on those events, whereas the pulse is kind of weakening things in between. So just to what extent that's influencing expectations or whether the pulse loses some momentum as a result. Let's not speculate too heavily on that.
No.
So demand was quite mixed. Just bear in mind, we had 1,000 tonnes of whole milk powder pulled from this last week and over 700 tonnes of skim milk powder. So put that in the background. Whole milk powder demand was up a little on average. Skim profoundly weaker. It would have been much worse if we had another 700 tonnes on that. And that's one of the worst in the last year, you know, nearly the bottom end of experience on GDT for skim milk powder. Butter going the other way, small volume obviously, but that's a pretty strong result. And prices at the start of this were already quite good for butter, and they've gone up again, nearly 7%. So
and again, opening up more of that premium against AMF, which we'll have a look
at. So I know you don't like these; they're not pretty interesting. So I tried to find something interesting out of these two charts, and I think this is the interesting point out of the whole event, that we've seen skim milk powder demand in the last few events just keep falling.
It has.
The starting
point.
Yeah. So that's a worry. It's not getting better. So whether we're, how far away is the bottom? I think that largely depends on what happens in Europe.
Yeah.
So on the buy side, China disappointed. We're down in these two categories in particular. One of the lowest showings in whole milk powder, and that was offset to some extent by stronger buying from Southeast Asia. But you can see on skim milk powder side, they also came back a little stronger, with China being quite weak there as well.
Yeah, still not where they were last year.
No. Look, there were some other interesting buying trends, but in the main, we've seen the highlights there, and synthetic values are still close to line ball.
Yep.
With whole
it's
milk.
Pretty much in line, and on the right hand side, we're seeing that massive discount for AMF, which must be getting fairly tempting for some.
You'd have to think
some buyers.
Yeah. So that's the worst ever discount on butterfat. Whole experience of GDT. So yeah, that is quite an alarming picture. So a blank screen. Chart of the week, Jo.
Bouncing in.
What have you got?
Well, this week I thought we'd just go across to the European Union, which does, a lot of this does hinge on what happens there. And just looking at what's happening with milk growth, it's a little bit better in the last lot of data for April. But the key thing there, I guess, is that solids are even stronger than milk production, just reflecting better quality feed, a bit more grain going in perhaps with pretty good prices. So we're really not seeing that slow down as much as maybe some on the supply side would like.
Yeah.
And interesting too, skim milk powder production was down a little bit for the latest month of data again in April. Everything was down in that data except for butter. So, that was a little bit odd. But interesting to keep an eye on that, where all those solids will wind up.
Yeah. The other thing going on, and just a bit of speculation, that we've seen the cheese market start to slow, so that cheese prices have weakened a little. There's nothing alarming there, but if that gets worse, we might see a bit more milk move back away from into skim. Yeah, so
which we do not really need.
Don't need, because no one wants it. Okay. Well, that's all from us. We hope this has been welcome return. We'll be back. We'll be back next week. We are coming back next week in between GDT results. Yes.
Okay.
We'll see you then.